So I'm not entirely sure how to know when my stream has started. Yesterday it started after I thought it had. So we're just gonna vamp a little bit here at the beginning. I believe that's probably enough though. So kind of slow news day today. Not really gonna, spend a lot of time on all these stories because, to be honest, nothing particularly interesting happened today. And if you're, busy or we're wondering if you should watch this and maybe do something else, I'd do something else. But if you want to be up on what happened in the world, I would go ahead and watch. Real quick for you, if you are gonna just give up on this, let me just run through just the headlines for you. UN to name Syria peace talks date as planned ceasefire approaches. Basically, they're pushing back the date of the peace talks, although the ceasefire will still go into effect. I think it's tomorrow, maybe the day after. New sanctions agreed to between the U.S. and China. However, it still has to go to the rest of the Security Council. China will be sending warships to join in RIMPAC, the big Pacific naval exercises this year. Liberals are upset with Obama's vetting of Brian Sandoval for the Supreme Court. However, Brian Sandoval says he doesn't want to be the nominee for the Supreme Court. Decent day on the stock market. Everything did about, oh, this is cool. I've never known. Oh, hold on. Where did that? Okay, cool. So as you see there, everything up by about 1% roughly. China, however, terrible day, down about 6-7% on everything. We have official confirmation that the U.S. Defense Department was the one who funded Carnegie Mellon when they went in and broke Tor. Some reparations for the Native Americans. They're getting about $1 billion. The Oregon standoff with the militia cost about $3 million in taxpayer money. And then apparently the Iranian government killed everybody in an entire town. So let's go back and let's watch what I think is probably the most important thing. This has actually happened last night, but you know how the world works. That means it's news today. This is Hillary Clinton being confronted by a Black Lives Matter protester at a $500 plate gathering. I believe it was a dinner, but what you're going to see is a gathering. Worth pointing out, the protester and the woman
making sure that South Carolina became the first state
spent $500 to get
this. There's more work to be done, but gotta lay down
we have
these
to bring him
markers.
to heel.
Gotta
Quote,
build
Hillary was talking about super
common
predators
sense
in the 90s
gun
when they were working on
reform,
the
criminal
climate.
justice
She's not saying anything.
reform, and all the like. So I think we've got a very.
She was talking about what she called super predators, which were these people who were getting recruited into gangs. And instead of showing any sympathy or empathy, because this was the tough on crime 90s, she said they were basically used all this inhuman language. They were like driven and to just commit crimes, and said we have to bring them to heel. So
I think we've got somebody saying here, we have to bring them
apologize for mass
to
incarceration.
heel. Okay, we'll talk
I'm
about
not a super predator, Hillary Clinton.
Okay, fine, we'll talk
Can you
about it.
apologize to black people for mass incarceration?
Well, can I talk, and then maybe you can listen to what I say? Okay, fine. Thank you very much. There's a lot of issues in this campaign. The very first speech that I gave back in April was about criminal justice reform
You called black
and
people
about
super predators.
You're being rude. That's not
Super
appropriate.
predators. That's
This
rude.
is not appropriate.
That's rude.
Yeah, you want to hear the facts, you just want to
I
talk.
know that you
Okay.
called black youth super predators in
Let-
1994.
let-
Please explain the record. Explain it to us. You owe black people an apology.
Well,
Excuse us. That's
I'll tell you
inappropriate.
what, if you will give me a chance to talk, I'll approach your side. You know what? Nobody's ever asked me before. You're the first person to ask me, and I'm happy to address it, but you are the first person to ask me here. Okay, back to the issues. The issues that I think are important.
So, great protest, first of all. A few things I want to highlight from that. Number one, the fucking whoever sounded like a woman, but whoever was in the background going, that's not appropriate. That's not appropriate. Everyone's all pissed about the booing and the hissing of this girl, but the person going, that's not appropriate, is, in my mind, everything that is wrong with the Democratic Party today. Not because. I mean, obviously she's right. This is not how you behave at a $500 a plate dinner. But the fact that this woman totally didn't understand what was going on in the situation, her only concern was that it was inappropriate and that she expressed it in that way, which was just so disgustingly lame and old fogyish and that's not appropriate. Of course, everyone also giving Hillary shit for after being confronted with, what is kind of an issue. I mean, the Clintons do deserve a bunch of the blame for the, mass incarceration and all that. She goes back to the issues I care about, and continues talking. There's a great picture, let me pull it up, of the crowd that she is talking to here, and it is not exactly what you would call cool people. Let's go with that. Oh my god. Twitter has an annoying interface. Okay. This is the crowd. This is the crowd she's looking at. Let's see if we can pull this picture up a little bigger, please, Twitter. Thank you. So this is the crowd. I don't think that's a black guy. I'm guessing that it's one of these ladies right here who was saying that's inappropriate. So yeah, fun group of people. This is Hillary's support right here. I'm very, very close. My whole thing with the globalist is it's supposed to be even-handed, both sides of the issues. I am very, very close to just officially declaring support for Bernie Sanders and saying fuck Hillary. However, for now, I will remain slightly, unbiased and point out that, actually no, this just makes Hillary. I can't find any upside for Hillary in this. I mean, obviously, Black Lives Matter has this problem with Bernie too, and I think their complaints about Bernie are completely fair. I've been very mad at him for the last few days. I think there's plenty of negatives for Bernie on, black economic issues. However, Hillary comes off so terribly in this video. I just clicked on a random time in this video. This face right here, it's so condescending. It's the mask slipping off, and it's the evil person, not evil, but the shitty person underneath who's so offended that someone would call her on. You can just see the months of frustration that she's being denied her turn slipping out as this woman confronts her. And then, the other part, well, Hillary has been living in this world, this $500 a plate dinner, fancy house, everyone dressed nice and just sort of standing around listening to her bloviate for 25 years. For my entire life, this has been this woman's world, and this other woman comes in and starts, questioning her, and she just gets mad, and she holds back. But, for the most part, she just gets mad, and it's great that the hashtag she went in here, this witch Hillary, you should look it up. It's got a lot of wonderful Hillary being a terrible politician person on it. And it's perfectly illustrated in this clip. The witch Hillary. Which Hillary are we going to get? Are we going to get this Hillary right here? Angry, things I'm not allowed to say because then I'm sexist Hillary? Or are we going to get... I guess she doesn't really face the camera. I don't get a good facial expression. But are we going to get nice? I mean, even there, she just looks so angry. Now, okay, here I'll take both sides of the issue because the whole election is angry politicians, and I shouldn't be criticizing Hillary for getting angry at this girl. I mean, this girl is protesting her. But you do have to draw the comparison. I mean, the Black Lives Matter protested Bernie. He shakes their hand and gives them the podium. Now, this is clearly a more direct attack on Hillary. That was, we wanted to, we want to be heard, and this is more you did a bad thing. So of course she's not going to give this girl the mic and say like, hey, tell everyone here about the racist thing I said 20 years ago. That's absurd. But I do think there's something to be said for the different ways they handle it. Bernie is a protester at heart. Hillary is establishment at heart. Hillary has the Secret Service come and escort the protester out. Bernie gives him the podium. And to be fair, we're talking about this difference of she's attacking Hillary personally, whereas those guys were attacking, Bernie's platform and asking for more of a voice. Bernie doesn't have a "we have to bring them to heel" quote. Bernie doesn't have that. It's just a long history of being at first progressive for his time, and then kind of falling behind the times and not really understanding the modern scholarship on all of, inequality and institutional racism, and just sort of taking, anyways, that's enough time on this. But yeah, very bad night for Hillary last night, and turns into a bad day today with the hashtag. So let's move on to Syria, where this is very much a non-story, so I'm just going to run through it very quickly. The United Nations will, on Friday, God, I hate this sentence. Friday, the United Nations is going to name a new date for Syrian peace talks to recommence. They met for a minute a while ago, fell apart, nothing happened. They're trying again. They've got this ceasefire that goes into effect. It probably says down here, but I'm sure I didn't highlight it because it's either Friday or Saturday. So the first time they fell apart, that was 3 weeks ago. They said they needed more preparatory work from the International Syria Support Group, which is basically U.S. and Russia. Disputes over the composition of delegations, lifting of sieges, and the agenda for the talks meant the first talks failed. These days, they made a little progress, certainly on composition of delegations. I think later down here in the article, we've got a thing about how the opposition is much more happy with the composition of the new delegates. But then also lifting sieges and agenda for the talk. I don't know that there's really been much progress on that. So it looks like they're going to get pushed back, the peace talks, till March 4th. That is like 10 days, I think. February's annoying. 29 days this year, 4, so like 8 days. So it's probably next weekend. The Syrian opposition, operating under the umbrella of High Negotiating Council, another poorly edited article, is wary that Russia will use the exemption for the Nusra Front as a pretext. Okay, so, sorry, I should have led into this a little better. The ceasefire that they have agreed to basically carves out exemptions for ISIS and the Nusra Front, the Al-Qaeda affiliate over there, which kind of sucks because Russia doesn't say they're bombing Syrian rebels at all. They say they're bombing ISIS, and then everyone looks and goes, yeah, but all the bombs are falling on rebels. You're clearly just supporting the Assad regime. So the fact that there is this exemption that covers the entirety of Russia's scope of operations means that it's doubtful that they'll really stop bombing the rebels. That said, if they do bomb the rebels can back out, America will get mad, and there is some pressure on them to keep doing the right thing, or to keep from bombing the rebels, but not all that much. The High Negotiating Council said it will give the ceasefire a fortnight to test the sincerity of the Syrian government in Russia. So that's what we're talking about. They're going to give it 2 weeks. And if in that 2 weeks, they're like, okay, you know what? Y'all are being legit about this. You're serious. Then we'll get some serious talks. Seems like in the meantime, they're going to be very skeptical. Russia bombed rebel-held areas in northwestern Syria on Thursday as government forces sought to take more ground at the Turkish border ahead of the planned halt to fighting. So what we have here, you remember, is basically there's a deadline and everyone's trying to get in their last bombs before the deadline passes. So things have kind of heated up there, especially over on the Turkish border, apparently. We talked yesterday about how Turkey is getting pissed at the Kurds, and it's basically they now want an exemption for the Kurds. They want to be able to attack the Kurds, who are our allies in the fight. That is the main problem with this whole arrangement is there isn't really a plan. I mean, we're getting talks, so we're very far away from an actual peace. They're hoping that they can. The point I wanted to make is we don't have a plan for how we're going to create peace here. We're just at this point just trying to get everyone together to talk, and this week we kind of pushed back the dates of that talk by another week. So that's what would happen there. Another kind of non-story, U.S.-China draft new North Korea sanctions. We've agreed with China on a UN resolution that would impose tougher sanctions on North Korea as punishment for its latest rocket launch. One diplomat expressed hope that it will be adopted in the coming days, which is the point of why this is a non-story. They have not adopted a resolution. It is not passed. It has not even gone to the floor yet. It's just that we and China, who are the two main players in the Security Council involved, but we and China have agreed on some terms we like, and then they're going to bring it to the rest of the Security Council soon. So the Security Council is scheduled to hold closed consultations Thursday afternoon, that's this afternoon, on compliance with the North Korean sanction resolutions, and the U.S.-China draft could be discussed then with 10 non-permanent council members. All discussions on the proposed resolution have been private, so we don't really know what they're saying. Now, roughly, of course, Washington is urging harsh punitive measures, and Beijing is emphasizing dialogue and milder UN steps that are confined to non-proliferation. So basically, we want to hit them where it hurts. We want to hit their cash and trades and keep them from getting shit they need. Beijing is like, hey, let's just, what you're concerned about isn't North Korea dropping a bomb. They're not going to do that. You're concerned about them sharing it with the terrorists, so let's go there. So those are the kind of two competing approaches to the whole thing. North Korea's, so according to a South Korean news station, the things that are going to be sanctioned in this agreement that we've come to: North Korea's Ministry of Atomic Energy Industry, which I'm assuming is not a typo and is actually the way the North Koreans named it because they are not great at the English, and I'm sure it makes more sense in Korean. Anyways, and the National Aerospace Development Agency, which is the body responsible for February's rocket launch. So you see the kind of Chinese, maybe pulling a little more to the Chinese vision here with we're putting sanctions on the atomic energy industry, ministry, and the National Aerospace Development Agency, and then the Secretive General Reconnaissance Bureau, which we already had sanctioned over the cyber attacks on Sony Pictures. They're getting blacklisted too. So nothing has actually happened here, but we are moving forward closer to something happening, which is, fun. Anyways, on the other side of the Chinese-U.S. foreign relations puzzle, we have a statement from China saying they will send warships to join a major U.S.-hosted naval drill this summer. That's RIMPAC, the Rim of the Pacific exercise, which is the world's largest international maritime exercise. It's held every 2 years in Hawaii in June and July, so that's coming up this year. Now, critics say we should bar them from the drills because we're pissed at them about what they're doing in the South China Sea. They're trying to, move in on our turf of controlling world trade, and we should be trying to put a stop to that. So critics think we should not be sharing practice fields with them and, maybe letting them get a look at our shit. We should just be blocking them entirely. Now, the big difference here, in the past, China has sent, in 2014, along with 20 other countries, China sent humanitarian relief and search and rescue type ships. But this year they will be sending warships. So that is, a lot of people are saying we should scale back China's involvement, and in fact they're scaling it up, which is interesting and good. I mean, it seems like war games are, a peace thing. It's better than war. So it seems like it's a good thing that we're moving in this direction. I mean, obviously it's not like escalation or anything like that. However, it's an interesting move, and I don't fully understand why we're making it. Of course, China wants to be involved, but why we're doing it if we're just, being nice, maybe a little too nice, if we don't care, if we think it's unimportant and symbolic, and that it'll sort of, it's the kind of symbolic thing that China can go to its people and say, look, we are a real nation, we're participating in RIMPAC, we are, powerful and everyone, respects us, except it's totally irrelevant on the actual world, so we don't give anything up and they get a lot. That's my best read of what's happening here. Then also it's worth pointing out China has their issues with us too. The Chinese Wu, spokesman of the Chinese Ministry of Defense, cited the example of U.S. arms sales to Taiwan and reconnaissance by U.S. warships near Chinese territory, as well as what China sees as discriminatory laws by the U.S. limiting military exchanges. Not entirely sure what this means, to be honest with you. Military exchanges, I don't think it means like arms trade. I would think it means like sharing information, and they feel like we're nicer to everyone else than we are to them, so that's discriminatory, but to be real with you, I don't know. Wu also criticized U.S. patrols in the South China Sea, so, we are disputing that territory. They think we're being too controlling of it, they think we think they're being too controlling of it, so that's, what we call a dispute. Anyways, that's what's going on there. Important story, unimportant development is my characterization of the story. So next up, we have Obama's sort of most recent name he's kind of floated to fill the Supreme Court slot. As we talked about yesterday, Mitch McConnell and the Senate Judiciary Committee say, not going to hear not going to have hearings on anybody that Obama nominates because they're 100% committed to keeping him from being the next nominator. And they think the best way for them to do that, the least painful way, is to completely shut the process down right now and not even give a hearing, not even keep it open for debate going forward. So kind of the two responses Obama has available to him to that play are, one, nominate a super liberal, Loretta Lynch, his attorney general, black, liberal woman, is the one people throw out. Super liberal nominee who will energize the base and will get everyone real excited and will, make people see if we get a Democrat president, this is the kind of Supreme Court justice we could have, and then they're going to turn out in November and, elect the Democrat. The other move is to nominate a very conservative person, this is the Brian Sandoval, governor of Nevada, move. And in that play, the options are, one, maybe actually get him on the court and, cut off the possibility of Democrats losing and then getting an even more conservative judge. Because remember, if Trump wins the election, God only knows what kind of justice he's going to nominate. And even if it's Rubio or Cruz, also would probably be someone horrible. But either Rubio or Cruz are going to put up some very conservative justices. Senate probably still going to be very Republican. So they'll be able to get away with a very, very conservative judge. So that is the worst case scenario, is that Obama can't get a nominee through and the Republicans win the presidency. So that gets cut off by nominating a sort of conservative judge and then letting him actually get through. Or the more likely scenario, because I don't really believe in any of the Republican presidential candidates, the more likely scenario is that by nominating a judge who should be perfectly acceptable to the Senate. I mean, this guy was, when he was nominated for the lower house the lower court that he currently serves in, he was unanimously passed. I don't have that highlighted, but it's true. So by nominating him and having the Senate still not even give him a hearing, the Democrats get to paint the Republicans as super duper obnoxiously obstructionist through the election, which should help in congressional races and local races. I mean, it's not just a hit on any one individual Republican. It gets to be a hit on the entire Republicans. They become the party of no when the Democrats are the party of, economic recovery and all kinds of wonderful things. So that's kind of the thinking here. Let's just get the details on the move. Governor of Nevada, former district court judge being vetted by the White House, and Harry Reid, we're going to learn later in the story. So nominating him could be seen as a campaign maneuver to call the bluff. However, liberals, this is what this story is actually about, is that liberals are pissed with this move because they wanted the first option. They wanted the super liberal to, motivate the base because they are, that's what the liberals are, they're the base. So they're saying it's downright absurd that President Obama would risk his legacy by appointing another anti-labor Republican like Governor Brian Sandoval to an already overwhelmingly pro-big business Supreme Court. Not wrong, not a totally invalid point. Risk his legacy is maybe a little strong, but liberals should be pushing for a more liberal justice. So that's what that is. Sandoval is being vetted by yada yada yada, as we just said. Unanimously confirmed. He quit the bench in 2009. Also worth pointing out, he was nominated by George W. Bush, so he's got conservative cred. Quit the bench in 2009 to run for governor and implemented Obama's Affordable Care Act in his state. So that's really the end of this story in terms of interesting things. I didn't bother learning much about this guy because, as we're going to talk about very briefly, he said around noon today that he doesn't want to be on the Supreme Court. He refused the proposal, and no one is commenting on it. So it's really not really worth examining whether he is a good play or not. But the game theory there of which way do you want to push the conversation, I think is the story. So it looks like, now granted, Obama did not nominate this guy. He just sort of floated his name. So the earliest hint, which we have to be aware is a hint he wanted us to get, is that he's leaning in the go conservative and hit them for blocking strategy. So we'll see how that plays out over the next probably 10 months or so. Okay, let's look at the economy for today. As we talked about, everything up about 1%. Dow Jones 1.3, S&P 1.1, Europe, this is now futures, but 2.5, Nikkei up 1.5, also futures there. So what we have here is gains in banks and technology stocks are sort of leading the drive. S&P at a 7-week high, so things were bad. Things have been kind of scary for a little while, but we're coming out of that. In fact, yesterday, I think we were down 1% in the month of February, and now we're up 0.5%. Of course, a little bit of fluctuations. Later on, they're going to say the VIX is down. That's a measure of volatility, and it's a measure of like how much we're going like this. So things are kind of stabilizing and kind of moving in a more positive direction. The other thing, and I'm going to skip ahead a little bit to cover this. At the beginning of the year, the S&P's ratio of price to earnings, basically how much the stocks are selling for versus how much they're projected to earn, was 23%, which is very, very high. The average over the past 5 years is 15 times. It was at 23. We're going to see in Europe it's 14.6, and it's now down to 16.3. So it really kind of looks like what we saw at the end of last year, start of this year, was just a straight up correction. Things were kind of overvalued, and they're sort of correcting down to a more reasonable, more normal level. However, there's some other trends we got to talk about, so let's get into that. So yeah, we got some good economic data, especially in manufacturing, durable goods, and then crude oil is stabilizing, but not exactly bouncing back. So yeah, we've already gone over that. U.S. equities broke higher in the early afternoon after struggling for direction throughout the morning amid conflicting signals abroad. China's stocks tumbled the most in a month as surging money market rates signaled tighter liquidity. To be honest, I can't really parse that sentence for you, but I do know that we're going to talk in a second about how China's stocks crashed, and that was kind of offset by European shares rallying. Stocks Europe up 2%. I don't really have a good explanation for you on that. I will say, the last couple days, everyone's been super freaked out about Brexit, and I feel like that has kind of calmed down a little bit. But of course, there's a lot of shit going on, and I'm sure it's much more complicated than that. So on durable goods are, let's just pull the dictionary definition rather than me muddling through it. They're basically things that you buy and you have for a long time. Not quickly wear out, or more specifically, one that yields utility over time rather than being completely consumed in one use. So things like bricks, refrigerators, cars, mobile phones, things like that. And then also, while we're defining things, we're going to talk about capital goods in a second, which are goods that you buy to make other goods with. So I believe that includes like commodities, things like that, but also, a shirt blank would be a capital good. So anyway, so orders for those, for capital goods, rebounded in January by the most since June 2014. That's a year and a half ago. Orders for all durable goods up 4.9%, most since March. Separate data showed the number of Americans filing applications for unemployment benefits rose last week from a 3-month low, but that's in part reflecting the typical swings during holiday periods. So basically what we're seeing is, there's obviously a lot of concern over American manufacturing, American, goods and things, and whether anyone wants them or we're just going to get them from the cheap Asian countries. And those numbers have been going down, but today they went this is just for the month of January. In the month of January, they went up. So that's some good news, and that's a huge part of why we're getting a 1% bump on all the American markets. About 3/4 of S&P 500 firms have exceeded profit projections. We're going through earnings season right now because we have been going through earnings season because the quarter ended, and it's now wrapping up, and it looks like about 3/4 of S&P 500 firms will exceed their profit projections, and less than half topped sales forecasts. So those are two different numbers, but both positive, although the second one less so, obviously. Analysts estimate that earnings at S&P 500 companies fell 4.2% in the fourth quarter, compared with predictions for a 7% slump. So we knew the fourth quarter was going to be bad. We thought it would be really bad. It turned out it was just kind of bad. So that's obviously inspiring. Raw materials companies surged 1.3%. Defense companies also gained tractions. Consumer staples shares rallied to the highest ever, and utilities rose for a fourth straight day. Energy producers erased losses on crude's second straight reversal. So crude, has been going woo, but now it's kind of woo. So energy companies are getting happy about that. Let's turn to China for a second. Not too much to cover here, but the largest sell-off in a month was led by small cap stocks, so smaller companies, not the big major ones, that trade on the Shenzhen Stock Exchange. The Chinext index is what we're looking at in this graph here, which is heavily weighted with entertainment, consumer, and tech companies. Dropped by as much as 7.8% from yesterday's close, and then kind of recovered a little bit to end the day down 7.6%, which is worth pointing out because so this gap here, that's the Lunar New Year holiday where they took a week off. And things were kind of recovering, and then after the New Year, they kind of recovered more, and then today, last night, they erased all of those gains, and we're back to, over here's level with really no sign it's going to pick up. We're going to get to why in a second, so just bear with me. The rest of the markets didn't fare much better. The major indices all fell. So this is Chinext down 7.6, Shenzhen down, it looks like 7.5 or so. Shanghai Composite down 6%, and the CSI 300 down 6%. So really, really bad day in the Chinese economy. So let's look at why. There is concern in China that the positive sentence that buoyed markets after the Lunar New Year was overdone. Many investors also thought the government would cut interest rates to boost the economy throughout the year, but a recent rise in house prices left a question mark hanging over that theory too. So I believe what this means, and I will admit 100% that I am spotty with interest rates and all that kind of stuff, but they were looking to cut interest rates to sort of encourage investment instead of like holding on to money or parking it in safe places like bonds, things like that. But with housing prices going up, things look a little less scary, a little less like they need stimulus, and the housing prices, that does sort of put money in people's pockets to spend. So it should kind of do the work of cutting interest rates itself. So now everyone's a little less sure if that's going to happen, which is kind of important because tomorrow G20 finance ministers, the group of 20, the 20 biggest economies, their finance ministers are all going to get together in Shanghai, and they'll meet for 2 days. On the agenda is turmoil in the global markets and Beijing's clumsy handling of its yuan devaluation and stock market stimulus. So today's market drop could further undermine confidence in China's leadership. Basically, what investors like to see is, as much as possible, predictability and maturity from the people running economies. And China is not predictable right now at all. And partially that's because of a lot of things. Partially it's because the people running the Chinese economy have not been able to sort of get the dragon under control. So the G20, I don't believe, has any sort of power. They can't force anyone to do anything. But China, as we were just talking about, wants to be respected. They want to be seen as, an adult nation. And so if they get lectured like children, they're going to get upset. So maybe people get fired, maybe new policies will be enacted, maybe they'll come up with some great idea at the meeting. I don't know, but we should, look for on Monday what they talk about and what they're going to do going forward, because that'll give us a big clue as to what's going to happen to China and sort of by extension the rest of the emerging world. Okay. Another fun story here. The U.S. Defense Department funded Carnegie Mellon's research to break Tor. Tor, of course, the onion router, a type of browser that sends its signals all in big, circles bouncing all over the place so that nobody can tell who exactly they're talking to, and it's supposed to be anonymous. However, last July, people who use Tor realized that it was kind of being compromised. So let's go look at let's read the story here. Once the research reported success, this is the Carnegie Mellon's research attempting to de-anonymize the users of the service. Once the researchers reported success, some of the information, including the IP address of a user alleged to be on the staff of an online black market called Silk Road 2, was then subpoenaed by the FBI for use in an investigation into the market. Excuse me. Now, Tor itself is funded by the U.S. government, and it was initially developed by the U.S. Naval Research Laboratory and still receives money from the U.S. Department of State and National Science Foundation. So this is not, the FBI trying to get Apple to crack its encryption. This is a thing that the U.S. government helped build, and then they also helped subvert it, which, is how we do, baby. Carnegie Mellon research was first revealed in July 2014 when the two leads were due to present a paper at the Black Hat Hacking Conference on how to unmask the IP addresses of Tor users. But that presentation was canceled without explanation in the weeks leading up to the conference. So what people were speculating at the time was in the first half of 2014, a large number of nodes on the Tor network were sort of discovered to be trying to de-anonymize users. And people were guessing that that's what they were going to talk about. And it turns out probably it was. Tor Project report says, while we don't know when they started doing the attack, users who operated or accessed hidden services from early February through 4th of July should assume they were affected. But they also added that they don't really know what affected actually means. So that's sort of the most interesting thing to me in this story, is that we don't even know. We don't know how compromised Tor is. We don't know if it's over, if it's still compromised. We only know that the government managed to sort of get in there and at least get this one guy. Sorry, I switched highlight colors by accident here. The information was unveiled in response to requests by the lawyers of Brian Farrell, who's the guy accused of being a staff member on Silk Road 2. The lawyers were attempting to uncover the methods by which Farrell's IP address was discovered. So, he thought he was using Tor. He thought he was totally safe and couldn't be found. So his lawyers were like, how'd you know if it was my guy? And so Judge Richard Jones declined to fully publish the university's methods and ruled that the IP address of an internet user cannot be deemed private information. So that's an interesting point we're going to get to in a second, but I just want to finish that last point. The lawyers basically asked the judge, how do they get this information? And the judge, forced them to put out a little bit of the information, just sort of enough to show, we've actually got evidence that you did this thing. So that's really all we know is from this one little court filing about how it was compromised. So the judge's argument, this is very interesting. In order for a prospective user to use the Tor network, they must disclose information, including their IP addresses, to unknown individuals running Tor nodes so that their communications can be directed toward their destinations. Under such a system, an individual would necessarily be disclosing his identifying information to complete strangers. Such a submission is made despite the understanding communicated by the Tor project that the Tor network has vulnerabilities and that users might not remain anonymous. Under these circumstances, Tor users clearly lack a reasonable expectation of privacy in their IP addresses. So this is a sort of fascinating bit of mental gymnastics that it actually feels kind of legitimate. The argument here is that the way Tor's anonymity works is it's like watches at a swingers party, right? You all kind of toss your shit into this pile and then someone pulls it out and you don't really know immediately who you've got. I mean, that's a terrible analogy. I'm sure experts have better analogies, but the point is it's this shared anonymity. It's not like you're showing up in a mask and going, "Oh, you don't know who I am." It's like you're saying to this guy, "Hey, I'm this guy. Can you tell that guy?" And it sort of passes along until finally gets to this guy and he's like, "Okay, cool, thanks for the message," and doesn't really know who exactly he was talking to. So by that logic, you're saying to people, "Hey, look, I'm me," and therefore you have no expectation of privacy, even though the reason you're going into this whole operation is for privacy. So in the pursuit of privacy, in the best way anyone's been able to figure out how to do it, you actually give up your legal reasonable expectation of privacy. So it's a fucking valid argument as far as I can, work it out in my head. How do you argue that you're expecting privacy? I mean, the way, it's not like Carnegie Mellon, is that who we're talking about? Yeah, Carnegie Mellon. It's not like they, hacked into someone's computer. They just sort of, we don't know what they did. Maybe they hacked into someone's computer. But more likely what they did was they worked out some way to use the publicly available information to sort of reverse the anonymization process. So Tor, probably dead now. Probably gonna have to come up with a new way. I mean, even just onion routing, the concept of onion routing, probably dead now as a privacy thing. So hopefully someone comes up with something to replace it soon, because between the Apple thing and all the other shit and this, not a good day for people who need to communicate privately. Okay, happy story here. And if you'll allow me just one brief moment of break so I can handle a thing that just sort of popped up on my phone. I'll be very brief, I promise. So we have what is basically reparations for Native Americans. And apparently it's not exactly the first time. However, it has been a terribly drawn out process for them. So we're going to get into all these details. A judge has approved a nearly $1 billion settlement. Final, it's actually $940 million. Between the Obama administration and Native American tribes over claims the government shorted tribes for decades on contract costs to manage education, law enforcement, and other federal services. So, fucking legit. This is one of those things, you can criticize Obama for being a moderate, for, continuing drone wars, and for not really wrapping up Iraq or closing Guantanamo. You can criticize him for all kinds of things, but this is cool. This is the sort of thing he's been great at, in my mind, is like restoring America's reputation as an awesome nation and sort of making amends for some of the terrible shit that we've done. The judge's approval, filed late Tuesday, starts a process to release payment to the tribes that an attorney said could take several months. I'm going to go ahead and just assume that that's legal proceedings involving the government and $1 billion are complicated, and not that anyone's trying to get out of paying or anything like that. The end result was there was no objections to the settlement and no objections to the fee request. The ruling also said the government would pay attorney's fees, would pay the money to recoup costs, and then also that the attorneys would get 8.5% of the final settlement. So no objections to any of that, said a lawyer for the tribes, which shows a unity among Indian tribes that is absolutely astounding. Nearly 700 tribes or tribal agencies are expected to claim compensation, with amounts ranging from an estimated $8,000 for some Alaska Native villages and communities elsewhere, and sorry, I don't know where that clause goes, to $58 million for the Navajo Nation. Some underfunded federal contracts in the case reportedly date back to the 1970s, when a policy change allowed tribes to gain more oversight of federal programs meant to fulfill obligations established through treaties and other agreements. So, worth pointing out, this is what we're dealing with here. This is not reparations for like stealing their land and killing them and, all that horrible shit. This is just that over the last half century, we've still been being dicks to them. And the Obama administration was like, yeah, sorry about that most recent, spit in the face, salt on the wound thing. We'll make up for that. We'll give you what we promised you. So when I called it reparations earlier, that's a little harsh, or a little, not harsh, but a little much, a little overzealous. It's not reparations. It's not even a start on reparations. It is, however, us making up for the last shitty thing we did. So that's still nice. The case was first filed in 1990 by the Ramah Navajo chapter, which is about 4,000 people, and they became the lead plaintiff. Then in 2012, the case went before the Supreme Court, which sided with the tribes, sent the case back to the lower courts, and then the Interior Department announced they were, or proposed a settlement, which was agreed to. And since the Supreme Court ruling, Congress has appropriated hundreds of millions of dollars to fully fund contract support costs for tribes. Settlement is the latest in a recent string of major agreements between the Interior Department and tribes to resolve legal disputes that languished for years. In the largest agreement, the government agreed to pay out $3.4 billion to resolve claims over royalties owed to generations of individual landowners. So this one is a little closer to being reparations. I'm sure this is not, I mean, it says generations, but I'm sure that does not go back to 1700. So you still have to have a decent amount of guilt as an American on your conscience for how we treated the Native Americans. However, if you're an Obama supporter, you can take a little bit of pride in the fact that we are at least trying not to be quite so dickish anymore. So, yay us. That's awesome. Okay. Now, in terms of us still being dicks, although not the government this time, but the people, we have an article here trying to tally up how much the Oregon standoff with the Bundy Brigade cost the government and all associated agencies and local governments and stuff, and roughly they calculate it as $3 million billed to the taxpayers. The standoff forced police agencies throughout Oregon to devote resources to the response, while also requiring schools and multiple federal departments to halt their work in rural Harney County for more than a month. The $3 million, which officials say is significantly lower than the total cost, covers the activities of Oregon State Police, more than 35 local police and sheriff's agencies, the U.S. Bureau of Land Management, which had to keep paying more than 100 workers unable to work as the 41-day standoff dragged on. It does not include the expenses of the Fish and Wildlife Service, which runs the refuge, nor the very significant cost of the FBI. The first one seems weird. I don't know why the first one isn't counted. I guess I honestly don't have a good explanation for that. I mean, it seems like they're the most direct, all the other stuff, the police response, the schools shutting down, that was decisions that they made. That was like their response to the occupation, and it was they could have spent $2 million. They could have done it a little less. Not like it could have done less. It's $3 million because of the decisions they made. But the Fish and Wildlife Service, that's the building they went into. That's the building that they took over and shut down. So that was the part where they were directly fucking people over, and for some reason it's not counted in this total. Anyways, the next one that does not count the cost of the FBI, that's fucking reasonable, because this is what the FBI does. This is the FBI's job. This is not, yes, if these guys weren't dicks, the FBI wouldn't have had to spend the money on it, but the FBI spends its money on people being dicks. So this is just this year's brand of dick, is the Bundy Brigade. So totally fair that they don't count the FBI in this, but I think complete bullshit that they're not counting the Fish and Wildlife Service. And then the rest of the article is just adding up sort of all the shit that all the different agencies did. Didn't find it interesting at all, but if you think it might be, it's in The Guardian. How much did the Oregon standoff cost taxpayers? Millions, say early estimates. Okay. And then finally, to end on a happy note, or actually not, to end on a fucking crazily sad note, this is Euronews is, like tier 2 or 3 in terms of respectable site for me. It's not like its word is gospel, but also, I kind of believe it to not be wildly wrong. Apparently, an entire village full of men was executed in Iran. The entire male population of a village in Iran has been executed for its alleged role in drug trafficking, according to an Iranian cabinet minister. So this is not some, humanitarian group trying to, raise awareness or trying to make Iran look bad. This isn't the Saudis saying this. This is an Iranian cabinet minister trying to make the Iranian government look tough by saying that they killed every man in a village for being drug traffickers. The children, this is the vice president of Iran, responsible for women and family affairs. So this is now the, kind of more of like a humanitarian person talking. The children of the executed criminals are also already drug traffickers. They want to avenge the deaths of their fathers. At the same time, they are feeding their families with money from drugs trade, and the people of this village cannot be protected. Sistan and Baluchistan, provinces share thousands of kilometers of land border with neighboring Pakistan and Afghanistan and are a key smuggling point for opium and other narcotics. So that's what we're talking about here, is that sort of neck of the woods. I think the study is important, or not study, the story is important for a couple reasons. The main one is we as a world community right now are trying to get a handle on how much we can trust and get along with Iran. You know, Obama has sort of tied himself to the idea that Iran is modernizing and liberalizing and moderating, and that, you know, going forward, Iran is going to be a responsible nation with whom people can do business. The Republicans are taking the opposite tack. The Saudis agree with them. Most of the world community, as far as I can tell, seems to be on the Obama side. I mean, obviously Russia and China, they're kind of business partners of Iran, so they want us to like Iran. But they have elections going on right now, or I don't know if they're going on or about to start, but obviously we're all watching very closely to see how that goes. Probably also not unrelated to this action. I mean, they're clearly either trying to suppress dissent, to look tough, to do something, but I don't think this happens in a non-election year. So all eyes are on Iran right now to see how they're going to behave with this chance we've given them. And this, not a great move in terms of building their reputation. So yeah. Also not entirely sure that it's true. Certainly not that it's literally true that they killed. Oh, I'm sorry, I realized I had hanging people up there for so long. That's rough. So we're going to keep an eye on Iran. We're going to keep an eye on all these stories. We are going to not be here tomorrow because I don't do this on Fridays because nothing really ever happens. But on Monday, come back, hoping to set up a regular schedule of 5 p.m. doing this show. So thank you very much for watching. Sorry not much happened in the world today. Sorry I don't have some more happy stories for you. Weren't really. If you're a Bernie supporter, it was a great day. Otherwise, kind of a nothing day in the world. So talk to you soon. Bye-bye.